This is GILA. It was 6 years ago when I first heard about Tommy Robinson, when he was arrested and incarcerated in May 2018, and I began speaking out in support of him on my YouTube channel, because it became very clear very quickly to me just how unfair and unethical his treatment by British authorities actually was. As a Briton who was born in southeast England and grew up during the 70s, I took for granted when I was young my right to freedom of speech, being able to argue for any opinion and to disagree amicably, or amicably enough. The only opinions that weren't really acceptable at that time involved anti-Semitism. How times have changed. But then my parents themselves grew up during the Second World War with all its privations, and both my grandfathers fought for Britain during the First. It was my innate right as a British person to speak freely and to live as I chose once I reached adulthood. Witnessing the appalling travesties happening in my once free country, with millions of immigrants, the majority of whom subscribed to an ideology worse than Nazism because of its radical theological component, as well as its supremacism, anti-Semitism, hatred and bigotry towards all non-adherents, and the pathetic refusal to accept responsibility by successive governments for all the ills that have followed, especially the appalling rape and abuse of so many thousands of young British girls by gangs of mostly Muslim men, and the outrageous treatment of Tommy Robinson in particular, I am sick and tired of watching my once great and amazing country of Britain collapsing into a less and less free and more impoverished nightmare. After the successful big march in London yesterday, as I record this, Tommy was arrested this morning. I watched the whole documentary of Silenced today. And frankly, I found it utterly outrageous how truth and integrity have been subverted in order to promote a supposed anti-racist agenda, when it is frankly nothing of the sort. Never mind the enormous damage done to various people's lives so wrongly as a result of all the lies, especially the young man accused of waterboarding a young Syrian refugee, whom it appears, according to many accounts by many different people, was actually a deeply unpleasant boy, a misogynist and a bully. Tragically, the West is degenerating into a more and more oppressive and immoral abyss. And as I watch from Israel, while I've lived for the past 20 years now in a liberal democracy, fighting for survival against vilely indoctrinated Islamic torturers and murderers, and which actually respects freedom of speech, it's truly sad to see. Whatever happened to integrity? To Judeo-Christian moral values which actually underpin all the freedoms that I took for granted as a young woman? Tommy Robinson shows the kind of grit and determination that is admirable. Sure, he's something of a rough diamond and he was no angel when he was young, but he's fighting for freedom and human rights for us all. It's about time that the large majority of ordinary decent Britons, or decent enough, none of us is perfect, refuse to take the destruction of any more of our human rights and reverse the moral and cultural decline that has been happening, in retrospect, remarkably quickly. I deeply feel that the arrest this morning of Tommy Robinson, after a very successful march yesterday in London, is one step too far by the British authorities. And to the British Home Office in particular, stop persecuting this good and brave man who cares deeply about our country and its people, and start dealing with all the problems that successive governments have caused by a frankly utterly stupid and unwanted immigration policy. Tommy Robinson should be released immediately, and frankly, he deserves massive compensation for all the injustice and persecution you have put him through for years. And, in addition, anyone who openly supports Hamas in Britain, which is a banned terrorist organisation for very good reason. And here in Israel, we have witnessed the utter barbarity and murderous rampage that they carried out, along with many civilians who supported them from Gaza, of torture, mutilation, rape, and massacres of over 1,200 people, brutally and illegally abducting 250 others. And Hamas openly boast they would do the same again and again if they could. Anyone who openly and actively supports them should lose their British citizenship wherever possible and be deported. And anyone who actively works for barbaric Islamic Sharia law to become the law of the land, which would reduce all non-Muslims to oppressed third-class subjects forced to pay an outrageous jizya tax, a bit like paying the mafia protection money, with far fewer rights than Muslims and completely destroy our freedom to live as we choose, is essentially a traitor to Britain and the British people. Because Sharia law is totally incompatible with our hard-won values in Britain of equal human rights for everyone and freedom of speech, belief and expression, which urgently need to be restored in full. I would urge everyone who cares about freedom and human rights to speak out openly, freely, and persistently against the arrest of Tommy Robinson this morning, and put the new Labour government on notice that the British people are utterly fed up with being treated like pariahs in our own native country, and that we will not take it anymore. Thank you so much for listening.